Welcome to Left Africa.
Welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive. You know, I want you to picture the port of Damietta on the Mediterranean coast of Egypt.
Right on the water.
Exactly. It's the night of July 29, 2026. Docked right at the terminal is the methane Nile Eagle, and this is a massive US-flagged liquefied natural gas carrier.
Just actively loading cargo, right? Destined for European markets.
Yeah, operating as this vital civilian energy node. The night is quiet, you've just got the hum of the port machinery. And then, out of the darkness over the Eastern Med, a one-way attack drone slams directly into the midsection of the ship.
And, I mean, that single impact ignited a fire that didn't just threaten to vaporize the vessel, but it actually spread to a neighboring commercial bulk carrier before port authorities could even wrestle it under control. The sheer scale of the panic in those first few minutes is just, it's hard to overstate.
It really is. So our mission today is to unpack this geopolitical powder keg that basically just turned the world's most vital shipping choke point into an active combat zone.
Yeah, the fallout is massive.
Huge. And to do this, we are drawing on a really intense stack of late July and early August 2026 reporting. We've got sources from Business Insider Africa, Euronews, and Japan Today.
And these sources, you know, they provide this multifaceted view of an event that fundamentally altered the security architecture of the Red Sea and the Eastern Mediterranean.
Right.
We're going to look at the physics of the strike, the frantic intelligence scramble that followed, and this brand new military alliance that just formed in its wake.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's get into the core contradiction of this entire crisis. Because for years, Egypt made a promise, right, to global markets and to its own citizens.
Yeah. Cairo banked its entire economic strategy on this idea that strict neutrality in the ongoing proxy war between the US and Iran would keep the Suez Canal safe.
The logic was simple. We don't pick sides, we just keep the ships moving.
Right.
But that drone strike on the methane Nile Eagle proved that neutrality is no longer an insurance policy. In this climate, a massive neutral port might actually just be, well, an undefended invitation.
And the economic stakes behind that neutrality are just staggering. I mean, the Suez Canal isn't simply a waterway. It is a foundational pillar of the global economy.
Oh, for sure.
It facilitates roughly 12% of all international trade. For Egypt, it is an indispensable lifeline. It generates about $9.4 billion annually.
Which is, what, roughly 2% of their total GDP?
Exactly, 2%. So keeping that canal insulated from regional proxy wars wasn't just a preference for Cairo. It was a matter of state survival.
And Damietta sits right on the Mediterranean approach to the Suez. So hitting that specific port sends a message that the entire corridor is vulnerable.
Yeah, nobody is safe.
Let's look closely at the target itself, because the details reported by Business Insider Africa highlight this terrifying near miss.
Oh, it could have been so much worse.
Right. The methane Nile Eagle is operated by a subsidiary of Shinyo Energy. We are talking about a vessel with a capacity of 170,000 cubic meters of liquefied natural gas.
What's fascinating here is the physics of that. That volume of LNG turns the ship into a floating kinetic bomb, though perhaps not in the way most people intuitively assume.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, the natural gas isn't highly explosive while it remains in its liquid, supercooled state.
Oh, okay. So the danger is all about the cryogenic containment system.
Exactly. Liquefied natural gas is cooled to about negative 260 degrees Fahrenheit. The entire ship is essentially a massive, highly pressurized thermos.
Right.
When that highly specialized containment system is breached, say, by the warhead of an attack drone, the supercooled liquid is suddenly exposed to the ambient temperature of a warm Egyptian night.
And that's bad.
Very. This triggers a rapid phase change. The liquid violently boils back into a gas. And as it does, it expands to roughly 600 times its original volume in a fraction of a second.
Wow. So it's basically like shaking a massive soda can, but instead of a mess, it vaporizes the port.
That is a terrifyingly accurate analogy, yeah.
But wait, how did Damietta avoid a crater? Because the drone made direct contact, right?
It did. But based on the maritime damage assessments cited in the sources, two factors likely prevented a catastrophic cascading structural failure.
Okay, what were they?
First, the drone appears to have struck a reinforced non-cryogenic section of the vessel's midsection structure. It basically missed the primary containment tanks by a matter of meters.
Unbelievable luck. And the second factor.
Second, the ship's automated suppression systems and the crew's damage control response were executed with a speed that experts are frankly calling Miraculous.
Wow. So they contained the fire, but they couldn't contain the economic shockwave because the fallout was instantaneous.
Oh yeah, immediate.
Within 10 minutes of the strike, Egyptian authorities declared a state of emergency. The Suez Canal Authority had to temporarily halt all northbound traffic.
Just shut it all down.
Right. And this is where the geopolitical abstraction becomes a very real problem for you, the listener, because the global insurance markets panicked. According to Business Insider Africa, within hours of the Damietta strike, war risk premiums for ships transiting the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait surged by 40%.
A 40% spike overnight. That fundamentally alters the cost calculus of global shipping.
Exactly. Because shipping companies don't absorb those kinds of premium hikes, right? They pass them directly down the supply chain.
Yep, straight to the consumer.
Increased shipping costs mean more expensive raw materials for manufacturers, which translates to higher prices for consumer goods. I mean, a drone hits a ship in Egypt on a Tuesday, and you're paying more for electronics or groceries at the checkout counter a few weeks later.
It's all connected. But, because the Nile Eagle survived the impact without that catastrophic phase change explosion, there was substantial physical wreckage left behind on the docks of Damietta.
Oh, right. The drone parts.
Yeah, and that debris field immediately became the center of a fierce three-way international conflict over the forensics. The blame game started immediately.
It really did. Euronews reporting from July 30 detailed how quickly Washington moved to frame the narrative. The U.S. State Department released an assessment claiming the recovered engine components and airframe fragments matched the Iranian-designed Shahed 136.
Right, which is also known by its Russian designation, the Jiran 2.
Exactly. The U.S. explicitly blamed Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, specifically targeting the Quds Force for enabling the strike.
And the American argument leans heavily on recent operational precedent, right?
Yeah.
Washington noted that Houthi forces have launched dozens of Shahed-pattern drones against shipping in the Red Sea over the past few years.
So they're saying it's the same playbook.
Exactly. The U.S. position is that this proven IRGC-supplied capability has simply been geographically shifted to strike the Mediterranean approaches of the Suez. They argue the origin of the technology implicates Tehran, regardless of the specific launch point.
But Tehran's response was immediate and furious.
Oh, absolutely.
The Iranian Foreign Ministry completely rejected the U.S. claims. They labeled them evidence-free escalation, and they countered with their own aggressive narrative, blaming Israel.
Yeah, that was a major pivot.
Iran claimed the Damietta strike was a Mossad false flag operation. According to Tehran's statement, the attack was a calculated attempt by Israel to sabotage quiet, back-channel diplomatic negotiations taking place between Egypt and Iran, which were reportedly being mediated by Oman.
Right, and Iran's counterclaim pointed out that Israel has previously captured intact Houthi Shahed drones.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, so Tehran's argument is that Israeli intelligence possessed both the physical hardware required to fake an Iranian strike and the strategic motive to derail any warming of relations between Cairo and Tehran.
And again, just to pause, here we are laying out the operational logic both sides are using in this information war.
Right, we have to be clear about that.
We are not validating the U.S. forensic assessment, nor are we validating Iran's false flag accusation. What we need to do is look at the technology itself, because there is an analytical twist here that neither Washington nor Tehran focused on in their public statements.
Yeah, this raises an important question, because the Shahed 136 is fundamentally not a precision weapon.
Wait, really?
No, it relies primarily on inertial navigation systems, which are augmented by commercial-grade GPS.
Okay, let's break down why that matters. Inertial navigation uses, what, gyroscopes and accelerometers to calculate where the drone is based on where it started.
Exactly. But over a flight path of hundreds of miles, friction and tiny measurement errors compound. That's known as gyro drift.
Right, okay.
Even with GPS augmentation correcting that drift, the guidance systems on a standard Shahed 136, operating under optimal conditions, only provide an accuracy radius of roughly 50 meters.
A 50-meter margin of error.
Yeah. Which is perfectly fine if you are targeting a massive stationary power plant or a sprawling military base. It is entirely insufficient for hitting the specific midsection of a single LNG carrier docked in a crowded commercial port at night without accidentally hitting the neighboring bulk carrier or a loading crane instead.
Hold on, let me challenge that assumption, though. It's 2026. Drone technology moves incredibly fast. Why are we assuming the guidance system was standard?
That's a fair point.
Right. Couldn't whoever launched this, whether it was an Iranian proxy or someone else, have simply upgraded the drone with a modern optical seeker? They could program it to visually identify the silhouette of an LNG carrier and fly itself into the target autonomously? Why does this point to human intelligence?
Look, it's a fair question, but integrating advanced autonomous optical targeting into a cheap, mass-produced airframe like the Shahed 136 involves significant engineering hurdles that just haven't been observed in this theater yet.
Okay, fair enough.
Furthermore, commercial ports are incredibly visually cluttered environments. Distinguishing a specific vessel's silhouette amidst cranes, neighboring ships, and changing light conditions is really complex for autonomous systems.
So what's the alternative?
The far more plausible tactical explanation, one that aligns with historical proxy operations, is that someone on the ground in or near Damietta was feeding real-time terminal guidance coordinates or actively painting the target with a laser designator.
Wait, to hit a specific ship at night in a crowded port that definitely requires someone on the ground.
Exactly.
So hitting this specific ship on this specific night strongly implies a foreign intelligence shadow network operating right under Cairo's nose. Someone was watching the port, monitoring the loading schedule of the Nile Eagle, and providing the final telemetry to guide that drone in.
And that realization is profoundly destabilizing for Egypt. A drone penetrating their airspace is a military failure. But realizing that a foreign intelligence apparatus, regardless of whether it's Iranian, Israeli, or a proxy militia, can operate a sophisticated targeting network inside their sovereign borders to strike their most critical economic asset.
That's huge.
That is a catastrophic internal security failure.
It means their borders are porous, their domestic counterintelligence might be compromised, and their grand illusion of neutrality is completely dead.
Dead in the water.
Cairo realized in an instant that they could not protect the Suez Canal on their own. They desperately needed a protector, which triggered one of the fastest geopolitical realignments we've ever seen on the African continent.
The speed of it was just dizzying.
Yeah. Just 48 hours after the wreckage cooled in Damietta, an unprecedented closed-door meeting convened in Jeddah.
Saudi Arabia seized the moment, moving with a speed that left Western diplomats completely scrambling to catch up. The Saudi defense minister hosted an emergency summit bringing together Egypt, Sudan, Djibouti, Somalia, and Eritrea.
According to the August 2nd reporting from Japan today, that meeting resulted in the formation of an entirely new security bloc, the Red Sea Maritime Security Consortium.
Well, I get a mouthful, but yeah.
Saudi Arabia basically looked at the panic in Cairo and offered a comprehensive security umbrella. Japan today broke down the framework of this consortium into 3 distinct pillars. Let's dig into how these actually work, starting with the first pillar, joint naval patrols, stretching from the Mediterranean approaches of the Suez all the way south to the Bab el-Mandeb Strait.
Right, and the term joint patrols is politically useful, but we have to look at the practical mechanics here.
What do you mean?
Well, the Red Sea is massive, covering roughly 1,400 miles. Sudan, Eritrea, and Somalia do not possess blue water navies capable of sustaining complex patrol operations over that distance.
Sure, they just don't have the ships.
Egypt has naval assets, but they're clearly stretched. So in reality, Saudi Arabia is providing the overwhelming bulk of the physical hardware, the advanced radar picket ships, and the command and control infrastructure necessary to actually enforce this security corridor.
Which leads directly into the second pillar, a shared intelligence fusion center. Japan today noted the location remains undisclosed, but the goal is to integrate satellite imagery, signals intelligence, and commercial shipping data across all 6 member states.
That's a massive undertaking.
Right. How does a center like that actually operate when you are dealing with 6 nations that have vastly different technological capabilities and, frankly, historical trust issues?
Well, overcoming those trust issues is the primary hurdle of any fusion center. Operationally, it requires standardizing communication protocols so that a radar ping picked up by a Saudi frigate off the coast of Jeddah is instantly relayed to an Egyptian port authority in Damietta.
So it's all about speed.
Exactly. It's about breaking down the intelligence silos that allowed the shadow network to operate undetected in the first place. By pooling their data, they are attempting to create a unified, real-time threat picture of the entire Red Sea basin.
Okay, so the first 2 pillars are about logistics and data. But the third pillar is a massive political escalation.
It really is.
Japan today describes it as a collective defense clause. They refer to it as mutual security assurances. Here's where it gets really interesting. This collective defense clause is basically an Article 5 for the Red Sea.
It really is.
It's like the neighborhood watch suddenly turning into a localized NATO. An attack on one member's port infrastructure is legally treated as an attack on all of them.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Saudi Arabia is executing a masterclass in regional influence.
How so?
They aren't simply being good neighbors. They are systematically building an African client network. By extending their security umbrella from the Persian Gulf across the Red Sea and up to the Mediterranean, Riyadh is establishing itself as the undisputed maritime hegemon of the region. And Egypt, desperate to keep the Suez Canal open, just became the cornerstone of that new sphere of influence.
This represents a tectonic shift in how we understand sovereignty for these 5 African nations. For Egypt, Sudan, Djibouti, Somalia, and Eritrea, operating in 2026 means facing a very harsh reality. They aren't trying to navigate absolute independence anymore. They are engaged in what analysts call managed dependency.
And managed dependency is a crucial concept here. It echoes historical protectorate models where smaller states trade a degree of their foreign policy autonomy to a larger power in exchange for physical security.
Right, they just can't do it alone anymore.
Exactly. These nations are calculating that the threat of drone strikes and proxy militia violence has completely outpaced their own defensive capabilities.
They are willingly binding themselves to the Saudi security apparatus because Riyadh has the only navy in the region with the capital and the hardware to keep their export terminals from burning.
Yeah, survival has trumped absolute sovereignty.
The proxy wars that have ravaged the Sahel and the Levant have finally spilled over into the most valuable economic infrastructure on the continent, forcing these nations to pick a protector.
It is a grimly pragmatic calculation. I mean, the strike at Damietta provided Riyadh with the perfect, undeniable case study to justify this consortium's existence.
The timing was impeccable for them.
The Saudis offered a lifeline precisely when Cairo was drowning in the realization of its own vulnerability.
So what does this all mean? Why does a drone strike in an Egyptian port and a hurried treaty in Jeddah matter to you listening right now?
It's a fair question.
It matters because the drone didn't just hit the methane Nile Eagle, it shattered the foundational promise that the global supply chain was immune to these regional conflicts. The proxy war has evolved. State and non-state actors are now actively fighting over the very artery that keeps the global economy pumping.
It's unavoidable now.
12% of everything manufactured, bought, and sold on this planet is now caught in the crossfire of this shattered illusion of neutrality.
And that leads to a rather unsettling thought to leave you with, building on the reality of this brand new consortium. A massive chunk of global trade now relies on this completely untested Saudi-led alliance holding the line.
Right, they've never actually been tested as a group.
Exactly. So what actually happens to the global economy the first time that Article 5 collective defense clause has to be triggered?
Yeah, when the next drone inevitably slips through the net and hits a port in Djibouti or Sudan.
Will Saudi Arabia actually commit to a full-scale regional war to avenge an African port? Or will the political will of the consortium crumble under pressure?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because if they fail to respond, the deterrence factor vanishes, and the entire Red Sea shipping lane could collapse overnight.
The insurance policy of neutrality just went up in smoke, and the new security umbrella hasn't survived its first storm yet. We'll leave you to mull that over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll catch you next time.